Yesterday, October 10, is the World Mental Health Day, a particular day observed to raise awareness about mental health around the world and to mobilize efforts in support to those experiencing mental health issues. The COVID-19 pandemic has also caused a global mental health crisis, intensifying stress levels of people and exposing millions with the mental health threats and issues. Today, we are going to talk to Dr. Nova Riyanti Yusuf, a Secretary General of Asian Federation of Psychiatric Associations. Hello, Dr. Nova Riyanti
Hi.
Yusuf. How are you?
Hello. How are you? I'm doing well. I hope
I'm,
you're doing well too.
I'm doing well too. Happy World Mental Health Day.
Happy World Mental Health Day. It's a
Okay.
great day.
It is. It's like everyone that are affected by COVID-19 are more aware of what mental health and mental issue. And can you please elaborate in brief, what is mental health and are there a variety of type of mental health issues? And is it equally important as our physical health?
Yeah, I will explain from the point of view of our mental health law. Mental health, according to our mental health law, is defined as a condition in which an individual can develop physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially. So that individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with pressure, can work productively, and able to contribute to the community. Um, that's why in the mental health law, we introduce two new terminologies. One is people with mental problem, those who are vulnerable to have mental disorders, and people with mental disorder, those who already have diagnosis entities, clinical manifestation, having distress, and also suffering from dysfunction socially and occupation-wise. Therefore, it's very important when we talk about mental health, we also emphasize on the importance of promotive and preventive efforts because we do not want those who do not have mental problems to develop into mental health problems, those who have mental problems not to develop into mental disorders, and also those with mental disorders to be able to function again socially with skills training, such as rehabilitative effort.
Okay, so you just mentioned, like, what should we do to maintain or improve our mental health well-being then?
Okay, what we should do to try to maintain, okay, there are so many things that we can do actually, but I just want to highlight on three. One, we often underestimate the power of respite or rest. To me, respite or rest is a form of resilience because respite is simply a period of relaxing, sleeping, or doing nothing after a period of activity. And we stop for a well-deserved rest. But look at how much people suffering just to be able to sleep at night these days. Second, we also need to reflect if we have been stuck in hustle culture. As we all know, hustle culture, it's a lifestyle. When somebody continues to work and only rest for a short period of time, they feel like by doing this, they are successful. But if they have too much spare time or having too much me time, it feels like the biggest failure in life. This is a sign of an unhealthy mindset. And third one, we also need to be aware, are we stuck in our digital self? Because we all know a digital self is just an enhanced human. So the digital version is often what we want to be, but not who we actually are. And this digital self happens because of a long practice comparing oneself to other digital selves on social media as well. So we are trying to compete with unrealistic self. So this is a very unhealthy cycle going on in this world today. So those are the keywords. I think the importance of respite or rest, to be aware if we are stuck in hustle culture, And also, well, to reflect whether we are also developing a digital self of ourselves instead of being real.
Okay, so maybe it's like we have to be more aware of ourselves and listen to our body more. And maybe in Indonesia, the awareness has just begun or just recently, but in global and as the World Mental Health Day is an international day for global mental health education, awareness and advocacy against social stigma. What about in Indonesia? What is the current condition in your opinion? Does our society have adequate understanding of the term mental health so far?
I will look at it from two perspectives. So it's forward, but at the same time, it's backward. When I initiated the mental health law back in the parliament, it was in 2009. When I continuously advocated mental health, I only found two consumer support groups, Into the Light and Indonesia's schizophrenia care community. And the people, they hardly talk about mental health despite the violation of human rights to the people with mental disorders. But after the pandemic, it's what everybody talks about and what everybody needs to be sane and to survive the hardship of life, the pandemic's aftermath, the climate change, the extreme weather. So the awareness of mental health is absolutely there throughout the world, including Indonesia. And some researchers also point out that Gen Z is considered the generation to have the highest awareness of mental health and that they need mental health professionals for their mental health problems. But however, the internet is filled with irresponsible people too. Sometimes non-experts talk about mental health and giving toxic positivity to their readers or their followers. I don't mean that experts have to be psychiatrists or a psychologist, but you can also be a survivor. For instance, suicide attempt survivor or a drug abuse survivor. They can share their life's experience in dealing with mental problems. But there is also what I call a backward. It's very unfortunate trend that Gen Z starts to self-diagnose and internalize that they are mentally ill. Because if they do that, this can continue on to self-stigma and feeling bad about oneself. That's why it's very important for parents to also help pinpoint what app or what website to be looked at by their children to learn more about mental health in a responsible way, or simply ask them to consult to mental health experts to have conversation, to exchange ideas. Sometimes you don't have to be mentally ill to meet a psychiatrist or psychologist, like I said earlier, to prevent someone from being having mental problem, to prevent and not to become a mentally disorder.
Yes, I would agree with you. Like the generation nowadays, they can self-claim that they are having mental health issues, but it's like they can access the information now more easily. So maybe the parents need to support them as well. And by far, like what mental health issues that are commonly found in Indonesia in particular?
Okay, so the latest online survey in Indonesia was conducted by the Indonesian Psychiatric Association. So the respondents were almost 15,000, and the data was taken between March 2020 and March 2022. The result showed, so if we're talking about the estimated true prevalence here, it shows that for anxiety, it was 30%, and depression, 32%. Somewhat, Indonesian data results are similar to global data during the pandemic. I mean, we compare Indonesian data to a systematic review meta-analysis in 2021. So this is a global data we're talking about. More than 66 studies with more than 200,000 participants. And the results showed that the prevalence of anxiety was also 32% and depression 31.4%. So apparently the pandemic has resulted in the rise of anxiety and depression. And also, not to mention that in the first 5 months of the pandemic, we found out that 1 out of 5 respondents thought that they better die, and mostly at the age of 18 to 29 years old. So yeah, I think that's the recent data after the pandemic for what mental health problems that we've been having after the pandemic.
Yeah, and because of the pandemic as well, like maybe the younger generation, like the 18 to 25 years old, are more aware because of how easily they can access the information on the internet about mental health, not like we were before. And now as parents, maybe they also during the pandemic time experience some anxiety or depression. And do they need to go or like open like a open discussion with their children or their the younger generations to maybe one of the way to prevent like becoming worse, like the condition to prevent like suicide attempt and others?
Well, there are many possibilities to what can cause a suicide. Every suicide is unique, but psychological autopsies have shown that suicide is highly related to mental disorder, such as depression, bipolar disorder, and also not to exclude the possibility of impulsivity. I recently did research on developing a suicide prevention tool to detect risk factors of suicidal ideations among adolescents. It was conducted in Jakarta a year before the pandemic. And that research showed that there are 4 significant dimensions to predict suicidal ideation. 1 is loneliness, 2, burdensomeness, 3, belongingness, and 4, hopelessness. So this research, like I said, was just a year before the pandemic. I can just imagine how these dimensions have been aggravated by the pandemic, particularly loneliness. So a survey, it was conducted by 2 organizations, Into the Light and Change.org. They had around 5,000 participants. The research was done in 6 provinces. In Java, between May and June 2021, the result was 98% felt lonely. And even worse, the survey, we kept going on with the online survey until 2 years. So after 2 years, we discovered that out of 1,200 respondents who participated in this online survey, in 2 years, 85% had suicidality, and almost 36% of them have actually tried suicide attempt or planning the suicide.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the condition worsened by the pandemic. It was already not good, before the pandemic. For the teenager and the tendency for having suicidal ideation. But after the pandemic, it seems to get worse.
Yeah, because just recently it also just happened in Indonesia, some teenager. And last but not least, so you just explained how about the correlation between mental health issues and the mental health condition can affect someone to do or even try suicide attempt. So any advice on what do people need to do if they are sensing what they may have early sign of mental health? Like how do they seek help, especially if they are maybe like the loneliness and then they are a little bit shy or their surroundings are not very supportive on that?
Yes. The pandemic has raised awareness about mental health. It really has raised awareness about mental health throughout the world. Therefore, during the pandemic, most people have been seeking professional mental health help. I know that because me and my colleagues have been having the same experience. And it goes to show that the stigma of being mentally ill or having mental problems has somewhat been eroded by the pandemic itself. So the pandemic has also given path to the utilization of the digital mental health technology. You can now chat or do telepsychiatry with your therapist. But somehow, of course, suicide is an emergency. So if your family member has pressing thoughts about suicide, do not wait to take him or her to the emergency. If, however, someone sense any discomforts in feelings, distressing thoughts, or behavioral changes, I think please do not hesitate to make appointment with a psychologist or psychiatrist to consult, or you may start by utilizing the digital mental health technology first if you're uncomfortable to meet directly. And if you're a minor, then the parents must not wait or feel reluctant to do so. I think it's better be safe than sorry, because there is a misconception that mental health cannot end in death. Yes, it can end in death when there is suicidality.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nova, for the enlightenment about mental health as we are celebrating Mental Health Day internationally on October 10. And if I may conclude what Dr. Nova said, the three main points are to rest and to be aware of our body and ourselves, what we're feeling, and also to be aware of our digital self, not to compare our digital self and also to others' digital self. So once again, happy World Mental Health Day 2022. We may normalize that mental health is as important as physical health. Thank you very much, Dr. Nova.
Thank you for the opportunity.